Damn you, Sony!
Hi, I'm John and welcome to the Fit Life channel. What would you do if your Sony camera or lens was in repair at a Sony service center for almost 7 months? And what if you could only use it for a total of 3 weeks during that entire 7-month period? Would you be patient with Sony during that entire 7 months and give them many chances? Or would you become very upset, impatient, and then make a YouTube video ranting about how incompetent they were with their repair service?
Damn you, Sony!
Or would you just give up on Sony and never use any of their products again? So this video is going to be divided into 3 parts, so you will understand why it took Sony 7 months to get this lens correctly fixed. All right, let's dive into it and start with part 1. To understand why Sony had this lens for 7 months, we need to start from the beginning on what the original issue was to put it into a Sony service center. I wanted to replace my Sigma 16 and 30mm primes with a variable focal length lens for my videos and photos. I looked extensively at Sigma and Tamron's lineup. On one occasion, the Sony Zeiss 16-70mm f4 lens popped up on some camera websites I was browsing. The Sony 16-70mm f4.0 APS-C lens is tailored for photography for all Sony E-mount cameras. It was an older lens and few popular influencers on YouTube talked about it as a good APS-C lens. But I liked the look coming out of my Sony Xperia Pro I and Sony ZV-1 using the Zeiss lenses. So I decided to give the 16-70mm f4 Sony Zeiss lens another look. I did some research on this lens and there was 2 major things that stood out about it. This lens has a lot of controversy. Half of the users like it, and the other half say it's overpriced and underperforming. Frequent complaints were that it had soft corners, lacked the Zeiss trademark sharpness, and had issues with distortion. And for all of those issues, it was an expensive lens. By 2023, it was already 10 years old and still costs $1,000 US on Sony's website. But I really liked the Sony Zeiss look and wanted to match the ZV-1 and Xperia Pro I. I also wanted something different from the popular recommendations of going with Sigma or Tamron's version. I found one online for around $500. The seller said it was almost new, only had it for a year and a half, but did have some fungus on the front of the lens. So the seller told me that the fungus on the front of the lens wouldn't be an issue. So I decided to trust them, sent the payment to them, and within a week, I had the lens in my hand. The lens wasn't in the condition as the seller had promised. It looked heavily used with nicks in the body and exposed metal. Most of the numbers were fading away and the finish was very dull. It looked more like a 5-year-old plus lens than a year and a half. And the fungus on the front of this lens, it was bad. It was thick and actually behind the front lens on a different one. This is going to be very important to know later on for this video. It's natural for us to want to trust somebody at first, even if we've never met them before. And in hindsight, looking back at this situation, it's also my fault too in regards to the lens having some issues. Yes, the seller should have been honest and upfront with their advertisement, but I also should have done more due diligence and Looking at this picture for the lens in the ad, it doesn't accurately represent how it looks. There is a filter applied to it and some enhancements done to it. So that should have been a clue to me that there possibly might be more to what the seller is posting in their ad. I really wanted this lens, and emotional thinking took over rational reasoning. So I ended up with a problematic lens that was partially my fault. I took it out to do some videos and photos. You can see in my earlier YouTube videos about this lens that it lacked sharpness, Zeiss's color pop, and had color fringing in some video scenes. The complaint about this lens seemed to be credible. I felt cheated out of $500. For $50 more, I could have went with a brand new Sigma 18-50mm f2.8 lens. A friend of mine suggested that I give my lens to him and he could take it to a camera shop that he knew that cleaned fungus from lenses. However, the camera shop couldn't open up this lens to clean it. I had to find another source. So I decided to contact a Sony service center in my region to see if they could help me out. Is this the same Sony corporation that denied my request to repair my WF-1000XM4 earbuds? Even after they admitted the faulty batteries were their fault? Interesting. My first visit to the Sony Service Center was in June 2023. The nearest Sony service was 2 hours by car from my residence. Upon arrival, they told me they couldn't do it and would need to send it to another one that specialized in lens cleaning and repair. To have the entire lens cleaned with the fungus removed was affordable and would only take 1 to 2 weeks. I left my Sony 16-70mm f4 lens with the Sony Service Center and traveled the 2 hours back to my place, happy knowing it could be salvaged and my $500 was not a waste. Earlier I mentioned that lens, the 16-70mm, would be at a Sony Service Center for almost 7 months. How does dropping off a lens for a simple fungus removal lead to a 7-month adventure with Sony? Well, you're gonna have to wait until part 2 to see what happens with Sony. Leave any comments that you may have about this video or your experience with Sony in getting stuff repaired or other issues resolved. Please tap that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video, part 2. Or maybe I'll come up with a different one in between. See y'all later.